sometimes many of us want things to happen today, but that's not how God works. God works in different ways that we don't always understand.
You're watching the Spotlight Network. Starring Hollywood's newsman, Logan Crawford.
They now believe a single member.
He works with TV and film legends. And now, Logan's shining the spotlight on the world's top emerging authors and creators.
International were abducted.
This is Spotlight with Logan Crawford. Streaming on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire TV.
I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're diving into a profound story of faith, destiny, and divine mystery. We're talking with a terrific author. His name is Vernon H. Peters, and he has penned a powerful book. It is called God is in the Plan. In this powerful Christian novel, the pastor's quiet life is shaken when he uncovers what appears to be a divine blueprint unfolding in his small town, where miracles, secrets, and faith collide in extraordinary ways. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today, and we ask viewers like you to support authors like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his amazing book. The links are below this interview. Pastor Peters, thank you so much for joining us here today.
You're welcome, Logan. Thank you for having me on today.
It's such a pleasure to have you on the show. This is a terrific book, a powerful book. Talk to us a little bit about the inspiration behind it.
Well, the inspiration came from my own journey of faith and those moments when, I wonder if God was really still listening. And through ministry, I've seen people lose faith when their plans collapse. And I've asked, what if the plan never failed? What if we just misunderstood God's plan? And so writing became a calling and a healing process. And it's a story of how God turns confusion into clarity and pain into purpose. And so even during those periods of time, it's more about what God has done through my life that I wanted it to be revealed in this book.
Absolutely, absolutely. Talk to us about the title, God is in the Plan. What does that mean to you personally? What will it mean for readers?
Well, God is in the Plan. It's a title which I wanted to reflect a simple but profound truth. Sometimes we often say things that we do and find ourselves in situations. We always say God has a plan. But this book reminds us that God isn't distant from the plan. He's present in the plan. Every moment, even the painful ones, bear his fingerprints. It's both a challenge and a comfort. And when you're facing something, sometimes you realize that it's not random, but God is truly working through you. Take, for instance, the situation we are facing ourselves in this country, in this world we live in. Many people are asking, well, what tomorrow holds for me? How am I going to get through tomorrow? I had a job for 40 years and now I'm losing my job. But what's going to happen? But those are the moments that is considered uncertainty. Those are the moments that are considered, well, if I know God, maybe he'll help me through. But sometimes we call on God, and Logan, you notice, because I heard you in one of the interviews, you talk about Sunday morning was a day no one compromised. You had to go to church. I came up in the same type of environment where church was church. And so from that type of inspiration, knowing God then, this is how I decided, you know what? I need not only just my understanding to be put on paper, but I want people to get an understanding as why God is in the plan for their.
Yeah, it's very powerful. It works. It really connects with readers, no doubt. The novel explores belief versus doubt as one of its themes. Talk to us about that, why that contrast was important to include.
Well, it was important to include because sometimes when people think of it, it's that sometimes, you fail and you don't always understand. Why don't I have hope to go forward? Why don't I have hope to believe that things will work out in my life? And so as I continue in this journey, the book weaves about faith, doubt, struggle, hope, through relatable characters, relatable things. And so my goal really is to leave readers with that awe and conviction and a hope to believe that, look, be encouraged. Don't mistake silence, God's silence, for absence. And so when you continue down that type of a journey and have a greater understanding of who you are. Many times I tell my congregation, I say, look, many of us will go on home to glory and never really understood who we are, what was our real purpose in this life that we go through. And so sometimes you are questioning God, even in these times, even if you're a Christian, even if you understand that, look, I came up in a Christian setting, I understand God, I give my life to Christ. But sometimes, you don't always understand these things when you face real life situation. And so I wanted to make sure that people do understand that, look, don't mistake silence for absent, because God is still truly in the plan in our lives as we go forward. So whatever challenges you may be facing, you got to know that, look, God is still present and redeeming us at this very moment.
Absolutely, absolutely. Just because you're not aware of his presence doesn't mean he's not there. He's always there. He's working in ways that you might not be able to understand or might not be able to comprehend. Let's talk about your work. You've worked in the service of God and in the service of people your entire life as a pastor and a healthcare leader. Talk to us about how your years of service have influenced this book.
Well, when I think about it, I would put it in this context or this sense. I didn't come to ministry just by accident. I think God called me when I thought I was, even though I was unqualified in some ways. But I remember those early days stepping into the pulpit and, sometimes with trembling hands and wondering if I had enough wisdom or strength to lead God's people. And as you would look through my bio, you would see that I came from a background in terms of a nurse for 25 years, serving at Mount Sinai Hospital. And so going from saving lives to saving soul was never an easy transition in my life. And, I even questioned myself often. But then God reminded me that my grace is sufficient for you and my power is made perfect in weakness. And through the years, ministry brought both blessing and burdens. There were seasons, Logan, where, it was overflowing with joy. And when the Spirit moved mightily in the church and in the lives, lives were changed, community were strengthened. But there were also hard seasons in my life, moments when the pews felt emptier than the promises that I was clinging to. When criticism, cut really deep, and when I quietly wonder if my labor was in vain. I carried many funerals and that broke my heart. I walked with families through storms and, shook and see their faith being shook as well as mine. Yet, in every trial, God showed me that he was still guiding, he was still present, he was still faithful. And so, Logan, one of the greatest turning points in my life came during a season of deep personal loss. When I find myself asking, Lord, how does any of this fit into your plan? It was in those tearful nights and quiet prayers that God whispered to me, what looks like chaos to you is still under my control. Trust me, the truth became an anchor for me. And that was my transition over into this.
Yeah. Well, you're a beautiful speaker, no doubt that influences your writing. It's articulate, it's eloquent, and the prose is quite beautiful. This is a powerful message, I think, that all people need to hear. Have you envisioned this book as a film, perhaps, that you might reach more people?
Oh, most certainly. From the time I start writing the book, my whole persona were that, I hope that this book that will reach the right person or the right personnel or the right department so that they could then transform it into a movie, into something else, where it could reach multiple people across, not just a certain section of persons, because I didn't just want it to be just a Christian book or just a book only to Christians. I want it to be a broader perspective, because I think I have something within this book for it to go in that sense. So, writing the book wasn't just about telling the story. It was about sharing the truth that sustained me, that God is ever improvising with our life. He's always orchestrating it. So yes, I do envision it going to that next level. And if it does, Logan, I would definitely ask them to let you be Pastor Ethan as you go forward with this.
That would be wonderful. I'd be honored to play such an important role in such a beautiful story. And I think you've done the hard work. You have put the story out there in the form of a book. So hopefully it finds its way into the right hands, the people in Hollywood who still have faith, who still are people of God, who think this is an important message like I do, no doubt. What's your best advice to someone who is struggling to see God's purpose during difficult times?
Well, that's a question that definitely some of the persons who read the book were really asking me, well, why is this book timely today? Or what should I get out of this book? How could I better my life? And so one of the things is that we do live in uncertainty, unrest, financial strain. People are going through even spiritual fatigue. And so my message is always God's plan hasn't changed. Remember that God is still present. So whatever challenges that we might find ourselves facing, whatever vulnerability we might find ourselves in, we got to understand that every day as you pour into different things, it's real life struggle for so many people. But we got to have the patience. We got to learn how to trust God's timing during our process in life. Sometimes many of us want things to happen today, but that's not how God works. God works in different ways that we don't always understand. And so when people look and want to say, well, how does it bless me? How does it connect to me? I always try to tell them that, look, no matter what you may find yourself in, no matter how difficult life is, continue to trust God enough. Continue to have that understanding that God is still who He said He is. And if we trust Him enough, God will always make a way for us. It may not be the time when we want Him, but remember that we serve an on-time God.
Yeah. Let me quote a wise man who says, even when life feels hopeless, there is always hope in Jesus Christ.
Yes.
And that is your motto. And I think it's so empowering. And I think this book is going to empower readers for sure. Before I leave you today, let me just ask you this. When they close that last page, when they finish this book, what do you hope they take away with it, from it? And what do you hope stays with them?
My testimony and my witnesses and my offering is to remind the world that no matter where you are, no matter what you face, you can trust God enough even to allow God to be the author of your life, your story, your journey as you go through. Just remember that God is in the plan for everything that you do. Sometimes we tend to give up too easy. Sometimes we tend to throw in the towel too quickly. But you got to remain faithful and trust God enough. Think about it. God has brought us through all different types of trials and tribulations within our life. And when we look back and we see how we made it over, we know it wasn't by ourselves. We know it was God who was bringing us through in those troubling times, in those seasons of our life when somehow things just didn't go right. But we know that if we trust God enough, God will be able to be still with us and to have us go through. So we will have the joys and the struggles sometimes, but remember that our testimony is that God is every day, is in our lives, is in our moments, is in our struggles, and he's the one who will bring us through to the end. So remember that God is truly in the plan for your life.
Amen. Amen. Well said. Beautifully written book, beautifully articulated interview. The name of the book we're talking about today is God is in the Plan. It is written by Pastor Peters. And in the book, he reminds us that no matter how uncertain life may seem, God's purpose is always unfolding in ways we can't always see, but can always trust. Pastor, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thank you, Logan, for having me, and I look forward to hopefully meeting you one day in person.
That would be wonderful. I look forward to that as well.
Yes.
Be blessed to listen to your sermons, your preaching one day, because I think your congregants are blessed to have you as a spiritual leader. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time.